if you are a human being, chances are you have heard the story of the tortoise and the hare. But my question is, have you ever thought about it in a spiritual sense? Hey everyone, welcome to my latest video and the latest entry into the spiritual fitness series. I'm going to switch it up a bit. I'm going to break away from Richard Foster's book and kind of go over a timeless story, a timeless fable. I believe it was Aesop's, one of Aesop's fables, where he tells the story of the tortoise and the hare. Now, I remember this story growing up, hearing about it in like kindergarten or something, and teachers always enforce something about being slow and steady, being consistent, and not trying to rush through things, and stuff like that. So if by chance you have not heard of the story, it's weird if you haven't, but if you are unfamiliar with the story or need a refresher, basically what happens is one day, there's many versions, but the version that I'm going to use is the one I'm familiar with. But in this version, the tortoise and the hare, they are going to have a race, and the hare is like looking at this slow tortoise like, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk. I got this. This is a breeze. And so the tortoise is like, sure, I'll race. What I have to lose, I'll go for it. And so and the hare is like blowing past the tortoise, and he's like so far ahead of the tortoise. He's just like, he start taking breaks, and he's just chilling, but the tortoise is going. He's chugging along, not giving up. No matter how far ahead he sees this hare, he's like, whatever, I'm determined to finish this race. So he keeps going. And the hare, again, he's just going on about his business. He's going, checking out over here, he's checking out over there. I remember watching certain cartoons about it to where the hare was so far ahead of the tortoise that he went on vacations and on the beach sipping umbrella drinks and stuff like that. But then towards the end, though, he saw that the tortoise still didn't give up, and he was actually pretty close to the finish line, and the hare was way over here, and he had to catch up to the tortoise. Imagine that. But he was so confident in his ability. He was so sure of how superior in speed he was to the tortoise. He just kind of took it for granted, and we all know the end, the tortoise ends up winning. Imagine the hare's humiliation, right? So I know you're asking, like, what does this have to do with anything spiritual? And I am glad to tell you, there's so many times in the Christian journey you come across certain individuals who rest in their laurels, they rest in their righteousness, and they believe they are so far ahead and so much more mature and so much more far ahead, just like the hare was. He thought he's like, I do this, like I tithe, I do, I donate my time, I give to the poor, I'm at church every time the doors are open. Like, they just believe themselves to be superior in every way to everyone else. Okay? And then you have those people who don't feel worthy, so to speak, and they stumble, they fall, but they keep going. They're consistent, right? They just like, you know what? No, how could God love me? But I'm going to keep trying, right? So just imagine these people are like the woman that had the issue of blood, to where she's like, I have all these problems, but if I can just touch the hem of his garment, if I can just get close enough, I'll be okay. And that's kind of how the tortoises of the faith are. They start off slow, but as long as they're consistent and they keep going and don't give up. See where I'm going with this? To further illustrate my point, I'm going to borrow the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, which is by far my favorite parable of Jesus that Jesus has ever told, which is recorded in Luke 18. In the parable, you have the Pharisee and the tax collector. They went into the temple to pray, right? And so the Pharisee was by himself and he prayed. He said, Lord, Thank you for not making me like other men. I fast twice a week. I don't cheat on my wife. I pray every day. I tithe. I do all these extra things to prove myself, my devotion to you. And the tax collector, on the other hand, he couldn't even look up to heaven. He just beat his breast, beat his chest, and said, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Now, for just to help some of you out, tax collectors at this time were despised. Okay, especially Jewish tax collectors, because at this time, Israel was controlled and dominated by Rome, and tax collectors worked for Rome, so they went and got taxes to send to Caesar, right? And so whenever you were a tax collector, a Jewish tax collector, you were looked at pretty much as a traitor, right? And then also what a lot of these tax collectors would do was they would get extra money, all right? So what they would charge people extra and pocket and give the rest to Caesar, or give to Caesar what is his and pocket the rest. You see what I'm saying? And so they were looked at as dishonest, corrupt people and traitors. So that's what drives this point home even further, right? So you had this person that was despised, one of the chief sinners, and then you had the Pharisee, who was supposed to be the epitome of righteousness. And Jesus was saying, he was flipping. He said, well, this tax collector over here asked for mercy, and he was justified. Whereas this Pharisee over here, he exalted himself, and I'm going to humble him. Right? So you had the tax collector, who was the tortoise, and you have the Pharisee, who was the hare. So to tie this into spiritual fitness, whenever you're trying to build up your endurance, you have to build yourself up. You got to first, maybe jog 5 minutes. Sometimes you can't even make 5 minutes. You got to go 2. And then you go up to 5. Then you go up to 10. Then you go up to 15, 20, 40, and so forth. But the more you are consistent and you keep going, okay, you will make it. But you have to build your endurance up. You won't be able to go full speed. You won't be able to just dive right into whatever it is. It takes time. God builds us up each and every day. And that's the problem with a lot of us is when we start seeing what other people in the faith that are doing, that's been in it for a long time, and we admire that, we envy that, and we want to be where they are. Okay, one of the popular saying that people have is, you want the results, but you don't put in the work. And you have to put in the work. You have to be consistent, and we always want to rush the process, especially us Americans. We want everything microwave. We want everything quickly, expediently, but it won't come that way, especially in the faith, right? There was one verse, I believe it's in Exodus, that God says, little by little, I will drive them out. Okay, so he was talking about, I believe, the pagan nations. As Israel was going to occupy the promised land, on their way there, he said, little by little, I will drive them out. And so we can tie that into a spiritual sense. Like little by little, God will drive out the sins in our lives as we strive and go towards Christ-likeness. But you can't rush it. Israel could not occupy the Holy Land immediately. They had to go little by little. They had to fight this battle. They had to fight this battle. They had to learn this lesson. They had to fight this battle. They had to take a step back. They had to get beat up. Then they had to keep going. But that is part of the journey, and we cannot despise the journey. You cannot despise small beginnings. Don't despise the small things. You have to conquer the little areas. Okay? So say, for example, you have a problem stealing things, right? So you start practicing and getting better by, say, like, if you borrow somebody's pen, give it back. It may not seem big, but you're working on that. Okay, it's the small things. And then if you can give back a pen, you can give back money you found on the ground that somebody dropped. If you give that back, who knows what you can give back? But you're working on not taking things from people. But it's just like the little things. If you're faithful in the little things, you can be faithful in the greater things. And we all want greater things. But you have to be consistent. You have to be faithful. Just like whenever you're trying to build up your body, like I said in the introduction video. It's little by little. You have to You have to have form. You have to have the gains, not the gains, but you have to have the form. You have to have the routine right. It's like all these steps you have to take, and then you go forward. But never rush the process, because if you rush the process, you're going to have imbalances. Look that up. Muscle imbalances. There's some people, they have, one shoulder smaller than the other one or whatever. That is not a good look. As we progress on our spiritual journeys, it's very important to know that transformation is hardly ever instantaneous. Okay, especially in our journey, we have to understand and know that it's a day-by-day thing. Every day we walk, every day we improve. Every day God is working out our salvation. Every day. Every day we wrestle against our flesh. Every day we resist sin. But it's a day-by-day thing. And we have to have endurance. We have to build our endurance up, our spiritual cardio, to finish this race. May we all be tortoises and look crazy at the hare. No, but, may we all be tortoises and not hares. May we finish this race and get the crown that is promised to us. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged when you mess up, when you sin. God isn't going to cast you out of heaven like that. But just be consistent. Keep going forward and watch God work in you, because I truly believe, without any doubt, that he who began a good work in you will see it through until the end.